Hey, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another exciting lesson inside of the Kotlin Messenger series. I really hope you guys are doing well today, and I hope you guys were able to sort of follow along with the very last video. In today's lesson, we are going to build out a couple more features for our application here. And so the first thing I would like to do is to read off our agenda all the way at the very top here, and I'll show you what we are going to work on in today's video. So the first task at hand is to allow the user to somehow upload a profile image whenever they are registering for a brand new account, right? And so we are going to store these profile images inside of Firebase Storage just so that we can retrieve it later on. And so why don't I go ahead and show you what that feature looks like inside of the completed version of our application right over here in the green. So let's say I am registering for a new account, right? I'm going to select a photo by hitting that button, and this allows me to pick any photo on the device. I'll select eGrid right here, and then inside of this circular image view thing, we are able to see what our user profile image will look like later on. And now I can fill out the couple of fields down here. So let's say username is something like user6, and email is user6@gmail.com. Sounds pretty good. Password is just 123, and now I can actually hit the register button. Now, whenever I register for a new account, I'm going to upload this image to Firebase Storage, and then I'm going to save all of this information into Firebase Database just so that I can later see what all of my users are. And I'll show you what the structure for our database looks like in just a moment. Why don't I hit register here? And so we're registering for a new account. And when this is all done, we are going to show the latest messages for this user. All right, so I currently don't have any messages, and that's kind of why we see that over there. The Firebase database structure kind of looks like this. So let me shrink this browser down a little bit. And here is the Firebase Console. You should be familiar with it. Inside of database, I have my tree that kind of looks like this. And so I have a node called users, and all of the users will be saved using this kind of structure, which I'll explain what that means a little bit later on. All right, so those are the first two tasks that we want to get done with before we move on. The third task is to figure out how we can use this thing called a circular or a circle image view, which is a third-party dependency. And that circle image view allows us to kind of crop the image into a perfect circle like what you saw earlier. And then finally, if we have enough time today, we'll finally get to the keyboard management feature that allows you to scroll this view up and down to kind of get some of these UI components away from the keyboard down at the very bottom. All right, so these are the couple of tasks that we have to take care of in today's video. Let's get started by going back into Android Studio and pick up where we left off in the very last video. Alrighty, everybody, welcome back to Android Studio. I really hope you're ready to start coding right off the bat here. The first thing I would like to do is to just simply run my application inside of the emulator on the right side. And I would like to sort of remind you where we left off in the last video. And basically we are inside of main activity, which is our registration screen inside of the green over here. And I went ahead and added in this circular button with the select photo text in the middle. And that is inside of activity main. If I turn back on the design mode, you'll see this button in the green. And the way I'm getting it to be perfectly round is I'm using this rounded select photo drawable resource inside of the drawable directory. It has a radius of 75. This guy actually has a height of 150, and that's kind of why you get this perfect circle all the way on the top over there. Okay, so that's kind of where we left off. And the first thing I would like to do is to kind of trigger an action every time I hit the select photo button on the top there. And why don't we start off by going back into activity main. For this select photo button, I can simply give it an ID. And the ID I will give it is called select photo and button underscore registered. So that sounds like a pretty good name to me. Now I can go back into main activity. For the onCreate method, I can now say select photo button registered and declare a set on click listener like so. All right, so this is pretty good, pretty easy start for us today. Inside of the tag for my log, I want to say try to show photo selector. All right, so nothing too confusing just yet. Let me hit the instant run to get my changes inside of the simulator, or the emulator rather. And every time I click on that select photo, it should show up in logcat. So let me say main activity, and we are now trying to show the photo selector. Okay, so pretty awesome stuff. And let's see, what do I want to do now? Well, before I show you the code that actually shows the photo selector, why don't I perform some code refactoring first? And so I don't really like the name of this main activity because it's really the registration page for my application. So what you can do is you can right click on this and you can click on the refactor and rename. And for this over here, because it's actually the register activity, let's just change the file name accordingly, hit the refactor. And so sometimes this doesn't work, but if you're lucky, it should show up as do refactor over here. And so these are all the references for your class. I'm just going to hit do refactor, and this changes the name in a couple of places. The first of which is inside of the actual class. So it's now called register activity there. Inside of the manifest file, it's called register activity there. And then finally, inside of the activity main, it's also changed up here as well. So make sure you are aware of what the refactor is doing, and you should be good to go. You can run the code one more time and just confirm that your application loads up correctly. So hitting this guy, opening up the logcat again, we are now register activity inside of the log tag. And down here, we are trying to show the photo selector. Okay, so that looks pretty good to me. And this means we are ready to move on to the next task. And this is to actually show the photo selector guy. The way to do this is to actually start some kind of activity. Now we can use start activity or start activity for result. And so let me just use this one because I actually want to figure out the result of picking the photo from the photo selector. So the way to do this is to create this intent first. And to actually create an intent for the photo selector, you can simply say intent.actionPick. So now that you have your photo selector intent right here, one last thing you have to do is to set the type on it so that you can tell the intent what you want to do. So you just want to select photos from it. So just specify the type as image/star like so. And now you're ready to pump in a couple of parameters for the start activity for result method call. So what does this look like? Well, we just want to pass in the intent like that. And for the second parameter, I'm going to use a request code of 0. All right, so that's not going to make any sense right now, and I'll tell you what this means later on. What I'm going to do is to hit the select photo button, and you see that now we get the photo selector to show up correctly, right? So hitting that and hitting that, everything looks pretty good. One thing we are missing, however, is that we're not showing the photo inside of this top circular thing, right? And so the question is, how exactly do we figure out what photo the user has selected from the selector? Well, the thing you have to do is to override another method right below. So I'm going to say on activity and result like that. All right, so this method is actually called whenever you finish the intent over here, which is your photo selector. And so start activity result right here. And then finally, we actually get notified with the data of the intent that we actually ended right on the top there. So this might look a little bit confusing, but you'll see what it does in just a moment. The thing that we do have to do is a couple of checks here. So the request code is over there, and you actually get that request code back right there. So I'm just going to say if request code is equal to 0 like so, and if the result code, you should always check this guy to be activity.ok, result OK. And let me also check if data is not equal to null. So inside of here, what we can do is we'll proceed and check what the selected image was, somehow, right? So we can actually run this right now. So log.d, and we'll say register activity. And for the message, we'll say, photo was selected. All right. So running this one more time, you'll actually see this message being printed out in the log down there. So hit the select photo, hit the download, maybe select Jon Snow over there, and you see that photo was selected. So this activity was started using start activity for result, and then we actually capture the result inside of this method there. So this is a pretty common pattern that you'll see often inside of Android. Hopefully you are familiar with this. All right, so now that we have the photo selected, we have to figure out what the photo actually is inside of our app, right? And the question is, how do we figure that out? Well, on this data object that was passed back to us, we can access something called data, which gives us the URI. And so let me just say URI equals all of that. Basically, a URI will represent the location of where that image is stored on the device. And so that's what that is. And for the URI, we can actually use this to get access to the image as a bitmap. So val bitmap, and this bit of code is a little bit strange, but you can actually use something called media store, images.media, I believe. So make sure to import this. I'm going to hit Control space and import that media and get bitmap like so. And so this guy takes in a content resolver and the URI from the line above. For the content resolver, you can just say content resolver, and this is a method that is available on activities, which is what this guy is, register activity. And then for the second parameter, just punch in URI, and now you have access to the bitmap of the photo that you selected, right? And so now the question is, how exactly do we show it inside of our UI? Well, there really isn't a good place right now, so I'm just going to put it inside of the button. So you can say select photo button to register, and you can actually set background drawable like this. And so this guy takes in some kind of drawable, and what you can do is you can say val bitmap drawable equals bitmap drawable. And this guy, I believe you can just pop in the bitmap from above, set this guy in here, and now you can run your code one final time. And now let's say we select the photo, right? We can hit on this guy, hit on Jon Snow, and the background of our photo button is now whatever photo we selected. So click on that, and that's kind of what you get. So that's obviously not what we want, but this is a pretty good way to show exactly what the image is that we selected. All right, so now that we have a pretty good handle for the selected photo data, we're now ready to move on to uploading this image into Firebase Storage somehow. So before I show you how to do that, I would like to move this variable outside of this method because I'll need to access it later on. So let's say var selected photo URI, let this guy be of URI type, and let it be optional and null like so as the default value. And over here, let me just set that local property up. So paste that in there. And now I have my selected photo URI. So that is pretty good. The next thing I would like to do is whenever I hit this register button, we actually invoke this perform register method. So let me actually fix this one last change over here. And there we go. So all the way at the top here, we are saying register button, register. We are performing register, command click into that. We can go all the way down into this method. And one thing that we can do is whenever we are successfully creating our user over here, we can call an additional method at the very end. So I'm going to say upload image to Firebase Storage, like so. All right, so this method belongs somewhere down here. So I'll say a private function, upload image to storage, and inside of here, we'll actually upload our image somehow. And so let's kind of start that long journey by going into Firebase Storage over here. Now, I already have a couple of images here, but whenever you are clicking into storage for the first time, you're presented with a message that tells you to get started. So make sure you hit that button and you should have some kind of screen with a grid like this. So the next thing we need to do for our Android app is to actually install the SDK for Firebase Storage. So we'll say Firebase Storage Android SDK. Just type that in there, click on the first link that shows up, and inside of here for the getting started, you have a way to install it. So this is what you have to include inside of your Gradle file. Copy that guy. And that's pretty much all we need. I'm going to move that out of the way. Click in the app Gradle file, and somewhere down here, you can just pop in the storage. And I'm also going to use the database as well. So why don't I just make that change now? And that should work. Hit the synchronize on the top right, and it will pull all of that data into your project, and you should be able to run your code again. So let's confirm our application still works. And done building, installing APK. And here we go. We have our application over here. And so let's go back into the registration activity. For the upload image to Firebase Storage, let me just show you how to actually upload an image. And it's actually very easy. You have to access Firebase Storage, use the get instance for the singleton method, and right here, you just want to say get reference. Now, the way I'm going to save all of my images is to save it inside of the images directory. That's why I have /images. And then I'm going to include the file name over here somehow. So what is file name? Well, file name, I'm just going to make a random string. And the way to do that is to use something called UUID, which is a unique ID. And over here, you can say a random UUID, and you can also say to string like that. So that's going to give you a really, really long string, which works for me. And you can just pump that into the string over there. All right, so over here is actually your reference to your Firebase storage upload area. And all you gotta do is you wanna say a ref.put right here. So you can put a lot of things, and conveniently for us, we have something called put file that takes in a URI. And this guy is obviously the selected photo URI that we got from selecting the photo from the photo selector. So hopefully that's pretty self-explanatory. And what you can do over here, so this, you can see that it has a mismatch, right? So URI over there. What you can do is you can unwrap it with the 2 bangs or 2 exclamation marks. That's not always the safest thing to do. You probably want to check if the selected photo URI, if this is equal null, you probably just want to return like that. All right, so that makes it a little bit safer for you to access this variable down below here. And all you gotta do is inside of here, you can say add on success listener like so. And inside of here, you can say log D. And let's see, the tag is register. Let's just keep it register. And we can say, what is this guy? Successfully uploaded image. And I think we can also access, let's see, $it.metadata. And let's say path like so. All right, so that looks pretty good. I think we need a question mark right here. So now that we have all of this code, we should be able to run it, but let me first change the tags over here to be a little bit more consistent. So main, turn that into register activity, and now you can run your application. So let's see if we select a photo with the button up here, click on one of these guys, click on that, and I think I'll just close out of that error. We're going to use the username of user, let's say user0 and user0@gmail.com. I'm just tabbing to get to the next field, so hit tab one more time. Hit the register. We should be able to see something in the activity or the log cap below. So we have the email is user@gmail with the password, and we are successfully creating the user with UID. And finally, we upload the image, and the path looks like this over here. So this is the actual file name for our image. Let me copy this and go back into storage over here. Let me just refresh this page by going into files. And inside of the images directory now, we can search for that image with find, and this BB7D is right over there. You can click on it. It'll show you exactly what that image is over there. It's roughly 393 kilobytes. And you can see the file location down over here. So this is the actual download URL. If you click on this guy and load it in your browser, you should be able to download that image like so. All right, so that looks pretty good. And the next thing we have to figure out how to do is inside of the code over here, whenever we are finished uploading the image, we want to have access to the file location somehow. And with the modifications to Firebase, the SDKs, you can now access the download location through the ref like this with download URL. So just hit that. And for this method call, you can say add on success listener like that, and just hit enter. So that's pretty good. And now what we have to do is we can actually access it via this it variable right here. So it is a URI, and you can simply say it to string. You should be able to get access to the file location. So I am just going to log this out one more time so you can see exactly what that is doing. So register activity message is over here. Oh, I think I just need to hit a string in here and file location. And let's just pop in the it to string. I think I just need it if it's inside of a string interpolation like so. And so let me just remove that one line, and I will run my code one more time, and let's see what it does after I upload an image. So click on the photo, click on her again, Egret. Nice looking image. So user01 and user01 at gmail.com, password, and register one last time. So we're going to register with our user, create it, upload it, and here is our file location. So this is what the URL looks like, and I loaded something similar to that previously in the Chrome browser. It's pretty much the exact same thing. So it's a really long URL that comes with a media and a token. And so now that we have kind of access to the file location, what we want to do is we want to save all of this information into Firebase somehow. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to save the user's username, maybe the email, but we're going to save the username and also the file location for our user inside of database over here. So let me just briefly open the Firebase Database console, and here is the structure for all of my users. And if I close this off, you can kind of see that users is a node, which is represented by this plus over here. When you expand this node, you have a list of users. That's kind of how you set up the data structure for a NoSQL type of database. And inside of here, for each one of these users, we have a UID. So this JJR thing is the user's unique ID. And for this user, we are saving profile image URL. We're just saving the UID just for convenience of this tutorial. And then we're also saving username over there. So let me show you how to kind of save this onto this user's node so that we can fetch all of our users later on. So let me just move the Chrome browser out of the way now. And over here, let's see, somewhere down here, after we retrieve the file location, we are going to say save user to database, so database. And maybe I'll make this a little bit more descriptive. So copy that and create one final function for our activity. I think this file is growing pretty large, but you know, that's kind of how code goes. You get more code as you develop more features. Okay, so moving on, we are going to say Firebase Database. All right, that looks good. And get the instance. And very similar to how we upload images to storage, we have to get a reference using this method called. The string we are going to get to the user's node with /users. And then the next thing we have to actually enter over here on the right side is the user's ID. So we're going to say UID. And the question now is, what exactly is this UID? Well, it's pretty much these funky strings over here, JJR and L4K. And you can actually get that through the Firebase Auth Sdk. So Firebase Auth, so Auth. And you can say get instance, and you have this property on it called UID, which is a string like that. So UID is equal to that. And every time you sign up for an account, this UID property will change to the correct string, kind of like these guys over there. Okay, so that is the UID, and I'm going to say val ref equals that. And the thing that we have to do now is we have to say ref.set something on it. So we can actually set a bunch of things. We can set a string, a number, a dictionary, a hash map, an array, and all that would actually work. So the easiest way to do this is to actually save an entire class object or a user object. And so this might be a little bit tricky, but it's actually really easy once you see the code. So I'm going to create a new class that represents a user inside of my entire application. So inside of Kotlin, you just declare a class and we have user. For the properties of every class, we just say val. And this guy, maybe we'll have a username. We'll have a profile image URL. That seems to make sense to me. And for the convenience of this lesson, we are also going to save the UID as well. This will make the lessons later on a lot easier to follow. So just save that. And for the set value, we want to set some kind of user over here. And the question is, what is this user object? Well, I'll create it for you right above. So user, like so. And this guy, we have 3 parameters that we need to pass in, which is down below over there. We need to pass in the UID. We need to pass in the username. So it comes from the actual text field up right there at the very top. And that's actually this guy. So you can say text.toString. And then finally at the very end, you have profile image URL. And so if you don't know exactly what this is just yet, it's pretty much the file location that we printed out down here. So this is the actual URL. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass this over to the method. So let's say this guy takes in the profile image URL, so image URL of type string. And so for this method call, you actually need to pass in that guy, which we will do so by saying it and toString like so. Okay, so hopefully you are able to follow along with that bit of logic. It's just a very simple function call. And before we can run this code now, we actually need to fix this guy. So UID, there is a type mismatch, and what you can do is you can check if the UID is null, or you can use this Elvis operator, and we'll just default it to the empty string like that. All right, so profile image URL now goes down here. And I think we should be good to go. I'm going to execute and add on success listener and just do that. This it guy has nothing on it. We're just going to log.d, and this guy will be the register activity again. Probably needs to make a constant for the tag. And over here, finally we saved the user to Firebase Database like so. Okay, so a lot of typing, and we're going to run our application one last time. You'll notice that I don't really have the failure listeners for the put file and the set value. So what I mean is you want to say add failure listener as well, and do some logging here and repeat that for this guy down here. But we're just going to do this for now. And what we are left with is to actually save this image. So let's save her again, egret. And we'll say 02 for the user 02 at gmail.com. Password, we'll just punch in that. And let's see if we register, what do we get down below? We created our user, we saved the file inside of some kind of location, and then finally we save the user to Firebase Database. Okay, so the question now is, where exactly is this user? Well, you notice that previously we only had 2 users of JJR and L4K for those users. Now we have this 7LWY thing. If you open it up, it has those 3 properties that we declared on our user object. The first is the username, so 02, and here's the UID along with the profile image URL. If you load up this guy into your Chrome browser, you'll be able to load up her image. So I don't know if you would really want to see that, but I guess I'll do that for you. So copy and paste, you'll get her inside of your browser. So just a standard JPEG or PNG image, whatever is inside of your device. So there is one last thing I would like to mention about Firebase Database, and that's the fact that if you remove the users node right over there and just hit the delete, everything will be deleted from your NoSQL database. And you can actually execute the save one more time, and it's going to create the structure for you. So let me quickly demonstrate what that looks like by creating a third user, so 03, and let me just modify this guy, 03, and tab, hit the register, and you'll see the data being inserted real time inside of this area. So register, it should show up in just a moment. So we now have this ZQPAM user, and if you open it up, we have user 3 like that. So that's pretty good, and Firebase is really easy to work with. You can just add in data in real time, and you'll see it kind of in effect inside of this tree. Okay, so great stuff, and that kind of wraps up today's lesson on Firebase. If you want to know how to change this select photo button to the round circle, kind of like what we have over here, so this round circle. So if you select the photo, you want to click that, and you notice this is a round with a border around it, right? Well, I guess I have a couple of minutes left for today's video. I'll show you how to do that by clicking a new tab. We are going to search for Android, let's say CircleImageView. Click on that, and you'll come upon this little library on GitHub called CircleImageView. And this guy allows you to really easily get a circular border around your image, as well as making it perfectly round. So going down a little bit further, you can see the dependencies here. So I'll just copy this. So I'm going to be using 2.2.0 for the version. And all you got to do is you want to make sure you add the XML later on when you need to use this component. So that's what it looks like. I'll show you how to do that by first going into the Gradle file. Somewhere down here, punch in the actual resource for your CircleImageView, hit the sync, and now you can go back into the resources, go into the layout over here for activity main. Let's see, maybe I want to refactor this to be something else that makes sense, a refactor. And this guy, we will call this activity register. Hit the refactor, hit the do refactor. And let's see, run this guy and make sure that my application still launches. And here we go. We are building, we are running, installing. And now we have this guy at the very top there. And so let's go into the register, and somewhere down here, so let me bring the preview up. And here we go. It is not rendering correctly just yet. Go back into the design, and this looks a lot better. So the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to put a CircleImageView right on top of the button, and you'll see the effect in just a little bit. So I'm just going to scroll all the way down to this file, and to insert these kind of external dependencies, you kind of just want to type it in like that. And let's see, the width and the height, I'm going to give it 150 dp. And that's because the button right here, so this button is actually 150 dp as well. So we'll just leave it as that. And now I'm going to go back into the design mode to sort of place it in the position I want. So this guy right here, you can kind of see I'm highlighted as the CircleImageView, right? So this is what the square box is indicating. I'm just going to pin it exactly where the select photo button is. So put that there, click that over here. And I believe this needs one more right there. Okay, so it's a little off center. You want to make sure you have 0 for the margins right there. And now it's kind of perfectly situated on top of this rounded select photo button. Okay, so one last thing we need to do is we want to give this guy an ID. And so we're going to say select photo image view and register, hit the enter. And now we can just go back to the register activity, and let's see, somewhere up here, whenever we are on activity result, instead of setting the register background drawable, we're going to comment that out, and we can now say select image view on register. You can actually set the image like this, so set image bitmap, and luckily this guy takes in a bitmap, which is what we have on 56 over there. So we'll just pop that in, and we should be okay. If we actually type in some more code, we might need it, but let me just say run, and let's select the photo and see what happens whenever we select a photo from the selector, click on that, click on John's note, and you see that that's kind of being hidden by this button over there. And so what I would like to do is I want to say select photo, select photo button, register, and I'll set the alpha equals to 0f because it's a float. So I'll run this one more time and select photo, click on maybe egret this time, click on that. And now the button is actually being hidden every time I select a photo. You can actually click this guy again and you'll get the photo selector to come out. So clicking on that, you'll swap out the image. Now, if you want to add a border to this to make it look a little bit nicer, you can go back to the text version of the register screen. And somewhere in here, you can just say border width. And I believe you can use something like 4 density pixels and click on this one more time. You should be able to see the changes relatively quickly. So click on that, click on egret again. You'll get that nice black border, which is 4 density pixels. Alrighty guys, I think that's going to wrap it up for today's video. Now I'm going to include some improvements to today's source code. So if you want to check it out, make sure to use the link down in the description below. If you want to support what I do on this channel, make sure to check out the courses on the website as well. I don't really have an Android course up right now, but I'm working on getting one out by the end of next month. And finally, with that being said, I really hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something new. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'll see you in the very next lesson. Bye bye guys.